Welcome back, and it's me, Lou. And today I'm gonna have some fun, and I'm gonna draw one of my favorite childhood superheroes, and it's this guy, Spider-Man. Now, this Spider-Man figure is pretty old. This one's about, I think it was made in 2002, and it looks like he has a broken neck because his head's like leaning off to the right side, and you can't adjust it. You can just move his head around, but his neck's kind of like sculpted so it looks like he's kind of partially in an action pose, which I don't mind. I mean, it's an older figure. So Spider-Man was, I grew up on Spider-Man. I think I was introduced to him with the old Spider-Man cartoon. I think it was from the late 60s or early 70s. And my fondest memory of the cartoon is, I think there was an episode where there was this giant robot monster, and it was like wrecking havoc in Central Park, and it had these giant magnet hands, and then its belly would open up and there'd be like a furnace inside, and this robot would like use its magnet hands and attract cars and anything metal, and it would throw it in its belly and just eat everything. So Spider-Man had to take him out. So that's like I think that's like my oldest memory of Spider-Man, and ever since then, when I was a little kid, I used to draw him with crayons all the time and watch the cartoons. And I think he was on Electric Company, and I think there was a live action Spider-Man, and I remember being a kid. Anytime I saw the live action Spider-Man, I always got really excited. And he's one of my favorite heroes. I don't read the comics anymore because I don't know, but I think growing up in childhood and a little bit throughout high school, he was always one of my favorite superheroes. So yeah, we're gonna draw Spider-Man. Some defining features that make Spider-Man a little bit more unique than other superheroes. I think one is his physique. He's a lot skinnier and lankier than other superheroes. He's not as bulky as like Captain America, and he's nowhere near as huge as the Hulk. He's a little bit more on the leaner and cut side. I'd say he's almost kind of like a medium-sized. I mean, in my head, I always kind of envision him as maybe like having the build of like a runner, or maybe even like a small-sized basketball player. And his costumes seen different iterations depending on the artist who draws them. Some artists like to draw Spider-Man with larger eyes. Some like drawing him with the smaller eyes. In terms of the webbing on his costume, some artists like to draw lots of webbing. Some like to draw minimal webbing. Depending on the era of the costume too, he used to have these wings. It's almost like a sugar glider that would be under his arms. But he doesn't have that anymore, I don't think. So yeah, we're gonna draw Spider-Man, and for this drawing, I'm gonna see if I could do this one in under, I don't know, 45 minutes. Just because all my other videos have been this way too long, and I want to just keep them reasonable in terms of the length. And if I sound a little stuffed up, I think I have allergies. I was outside yesterday taking down Christmas lights in like in the middle of March, because I don't know, the snow just started melting recently. So I kind of have a runny nose. All right, let's get drawing. All right, Spider-Man. Yeah, so apologize if I get the sniffles. All right. I kind of have an idea of the pose that I want to draw. I kind of want to have him a little bit more hunched down and leaned over. Okay, so let's get his. All right, there's his hip. Oh, shoot. Okay. Let's get his arm in. For me, Spider-Man's one of the big iconic superheroes. Um, like, if you told me, name three big superheroes, and I think the first one that normally comes to mind, at least for me, would probably be maybe like Batman or Superman, since they're so iconic, and I think Spider-Man would definitely be up there. Growing up, there was just so much about Spider-Man that just looked cool. I mean, he has a cool costume, he has cool powers. He can shoot webbing from his wrists and like swing on buildings, climb walls. He's definitely a superhero that I think Marvel and especially Disney, now that they have him, they know that he's just a powerhouse in terms of like marketing and branding. Little kids are so drawn to the character. Adults have such a fond nostalgia for the superhero. And if you look at his history, I mean, he's always had a presence in some form of media. Outside of the comic books, he's had it seems like every generation has a Spider-Man cartoon. Even the Japanese had a version of Spider-Man. He's appeared in like so many video games. Especially with this generation, a lot of kids don't read comic books anymore, and if they are exposed to superheroes, it's mostly through the movies or actually even the video games. Right, so I have this pose down. It's not perfect, but I just want this drawing to move really fast. I don't want to like be held up by like little nuances. As long as the gesture looks okay, and I mean the anatomy's not gonna be perfect, but I just want this dude to look like what he's supposed to look like. Now, am I gonna opt for which eyes do I want to go for? The bigger eyes or the smaller eyes? Let's go somewhere in between. Let's go for like maybe medium-sized eyes for him. I'm not gonna get too crazy with the eye design because I know some artists, it's not enough that they draw these like it's almost like an imperfect almond kind of shape for his eyes. But I know some other artists will like add little tiny embellishments. But I'm gonna try to keep this one a little bit simple. Yeah, let's figure out his head. So going back to his superpowers, I think Spider-Man has... The cool thing about superpowers is that they're really easily defined. Like, I never liked superheroes that had, like, more than just one superpower. Like, especially with, like, characters like the X-Men. I love the X-Men, but their power sets get kind of confusing sometimes. And with Spider-Man, his name says it all. He's Spider-Man. He's part spider. So... you'll know that he could like create webs and he could climb weird stuff, but there's other characters, like for example, there's an X-Men character, Jean Grey, and her powers, it's all over the board. She has telekinesis, which means she can move things with her mind, and then she also has telepathy. But then there's other versions of her, like the Phoenix Force, and then she has like godlike powers there. It's like, dude, just stick to one thing. Alright, Spider-Man. No, that's not right. Neck drawn in. I'm gonna bring his shoulder down. He's starting to look like Quasimodo. All right. Okay, this isn't perfect, but for what we're doing here today, it's good enough for me. And let's figure out where his spider emblem is going to be. Because it's going to be somewhere here. And spider has 8 legs, right? I just want to make sure I'm doing this right. Okay, 8 legs. Alright, so here's my, I don't know, my markers. I want this drawing to move fast. Let's work with a thicker marker. This marker's a little bit on the duller side, but okay. Originally, I was going to draw Spider-Man with his this hand. I was going to give him the web motion. Is that right? Yeah, this one. But I got lazy and I thought this would move faster if I just gave him a clenched fist. I mean, superheroes, they always have clenched fists. You buy a superhero action figure, 9 out of 10 times, both fists or one of the fists is going to be clenched. The line work for this one's going to be a little bit thicker too. Since I'm working with a fatter and duller Sharpie. Because like I said, I want this drawing to move really fast. And if I have time later, I could refine the details. But for now, I just want to hammer this guy out. Now, I don't think I should be outlining all these muscles right now, but I'll just have to make it work. Okay. Let's draw Spider-Man's head. I always get nervous when I'm tracing heads in Sharpies, especially since they're round shapes. Like if I mess up, it's kind of a, I'm already committing to that line, and if it looks off, it's going to look off. Okay, there's Spider-Man. Let's get the... I'm going to come back and double up on the contour line. it really boggles my mind how popular superheroes are, especially superhero movies. I always complain about this because I sound like an old man, but when I was in high school, no one was into comic books except for me and like 5 other people, and we had a student body of like 2,000 students. But it's just crazy how like stuff like superheroes is so mainstream, and the movies are like they're like juggernauts at the theater, and they make billions of dollars. And then every kid grows up knowing all the canon and lore about the characters, and it's like nowadays it's like cool to like be able to geek out and stuff like that. But man, when I was younger, it's kind of like one of those things where I had to be in the closet about my superhero stuff. And if people did know about it, they kind of just knew it and just accepted it. They're like, oh, that's just how Lewis is. He's just into that weird stuff. Okay. Let's get some of these muscle groups drawn in also. It's like I said before, I don't think normally I'd outline all the muscles like this, but I want this drawing to move a little bit faster, and I'm just going to have to make do with what I'm doing here and try to figure out what I'm doing is right. Alright, I'm content with this so far. Let's keep it going. Alright, I'm going to do his eyes now. I'm going to use a finer Sharpie for this just so I don't want to run the risk of messing it up with a fat one. Okay, let's blacken in some of the outline of his eyes. Okay. His eyes are done. Let's figure out where his costume's gonna be. Because he has his Spider-Man with his costume is predominantly darker with the blue areas, and then it's kind of highlighted with red. He has red boots, kind of like red forearm sleeves, and it kind of runs also halfway down his arm and bicep, and on his chest there's red that kind of like centers down his torso. I think that might take the longest. I think doing the webbing might take the longest part of the drawing. Let's get his spider emblem drawn in. Now this is where it bothers me. I should have held off on outlining all the muscle groups and did the spider first. But I don't know, I was just impatient. I couldn't wait. And then there's going to be 8 legs on the spider, I think, if I know my spiders. All right. Yeah, they're not perfect, but and let's draw that trace of red that runs down his torso. And it's gonna be like his waist and belt right here. What I'm working on right now. I don't know. Okay, that's fine. That's good enough. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to come in and I'm going to start. I need to establish a light source. We'll say the light's coming from up here. And let's start shading in the muscle groups real quick. I apologize if I'm a little bit more quiet with this one. I'm trying to make I'm like thinking a lot right now because I'm not sure if I'm doing everything I should be doing to making this look right. So, if that makes sense. All right, so we have his arms. Let's work on this area right here. I want his. Let's get this up here. So his muscles. I'm not sure if that's right. No, that's probably wrong. And let's get his muscle groups drawn in. Different artists have portrayed Spider-Man differently in terms of the color choice. Like there's some artists, they like to draw Spider-Man with a predominantly blue costume, whereas there's other artists who draw Spider-Man with, this is going to be mostly black with blue highlights. I kind of lean a little bit more towards the camp of, I like drawing it black with blue highlights. And if I remember correctly, I think the costume was when it was first introduced. I'm not sure if this is an urban myth or a rumor, but his costume was originally black and red. But I think it was, rumor has it, it was too expensive to print that much black ink, so the decision was made to save cost and make his costume more blue than black. Just because blue at the time was a cheaper ink. No, but don't quote me on that. That was just something I'm kind of, for some reason, I kind of recall hearing that a long time ago. I don't know if there's any truth to it. Spider-Man was one of these characters that always felt that if you could pull off drawing a decent looking Spider-Man, any other superhero should be easier to draw, just because he was such an intricate designed character. There's so much detail in him, but besides the fact that he's very detailed, he always strikes these really unique character poses. So if you could like figure out how to draw a good Spider-Man and all of these different gestures and poses, drawing any other superhero would be easy. I still kind of really believe that. If you could pull off a really good Spider-Man, drawing any other superhero, whether it be Iron Man or like Wonder Woman, will just come that much easier. Alright, so here's my Spider-Man. I'm going to start erasing the pencil lines before I come in with the webbing. I just want to clean them up a little just to see where he's at, if I'm happy with it. It looks like I missed a spot right here. Alright, there we go. Alright, let's start working on his webbing. There's actually a trick to drawing Spider-Man's webs. Especially like around the middle of his head. So for the way you draw it is, you start off, you find the middle of his head, and you just place a circle. So I'll place a circle there. And then you draw two lines that'll divide his face in half. But it'll divide his face in half. But you have to imagine it with the lines conforming to the roundness of his head. So the first line will come down like this, hit middle, and then the other one will come down like that. And then you just gradually build upon it, always making sure your lines converge towards the middle. like so. All right, so now that we have that, now what happens here is that you're going to create concentric circles. Now when I say concentric circles, that means you're going to have a circle and then you build circles surrounding around it. So, but I'm going to draw this in very lightly just let you see what I'm doing. So I'm building up these different circles on the inside of his head. I'm just drawing this in very lightly because I'm going to go back later with ink. So in some ways, you're almost drawing like essentially like a bullseye in his head. And if you know your superheroes, you know that Bullseye is another superhero, but it's a villain. All right. So now that I have that, what I do next is you just add the webs, which is just these tiny, mild arches, and then you just connect them. So, but you use your circle that you drew earlier as a guide. This is something, if you feel comfortable doing it, I'd just save the webbing for the inking stage of the drawing. Because if you draw it in pencil, you're just doing twice the work. I mean, that's why I kind of work a little bit looser when I draw. Oh, man. It's like I said before, whenever I erase a page, it's like no one leaves unscathed. You see, look at this little rip right there. Now, doing the webbing on his body is a lot different. The way I kind of learned how to do it was, I work a little bit, I'm not sure if I'm working backwards or not, but you imagine the pit of his neck, and then you're just going to draw a light guideline of where you think the pit of his neck is. And then just like with the head, you're going to build up all these concentric circles. But you have to make sure the circles conform to the shape of his body. Now this is where it's getting kind of iffy. I'm not sure if I'm doing this right. And there's a certain point where I'll kind of cheat and just say, okay, this is where it stops, and then I'll go in a different direction when I do the arms. Okay, so now it's the same principle here. You figure out where the halfway point is, and for me, it's the line from the pit of his neck down the middle of his chest down to the middle of his abs, and we'll see that's the first line of the web, and then I'll just gradually build around it. So I hope this makes sense. I mean, right now it's barely making any sense to me. So I haven't drawn this character in a couple of years. So we'll have a line here. So you can kind of see the webs here. So what I'll do now is I'll come in. All right, let's not mess this up. Okay, I'll draw these lines in first. If I was a animator, like traditional 2D animator or even a comic book artist, I think drawing Spider-Man, I think it'd be a dream job, but at the same time, I think it'd be a nightmare. Just because you have to draw all these webbings in his costume. Like if I was a comic book artist, I think I'd love to draw Silver Surfer because the dude's practically naked and his costume it's nothing. He's just covered in a silver sheen. That's it. And I know some artists have given Silver Surfer underwear or whatever tights, but okay. So now we're gonna do the same thing here, like we did with the head. We're gonna draw these mild little arches for the webbing, and you can start anywhere really. Just make sure that you're drawing all your arches going in the same direction and that they connect. And this is the tedious part of the drawing. Alright, Spider-Man. Yeah, so this is coming out pretty nice. If I had more time, I'd probably work with a finer line and just give more details. Plus, like I said, I wanted to keep this drawing under 45 minutes. I'm not sure if I'll be able to pull it off because I might be a couple minutes over. But that's alright. The last video I think was way over an hour. Which, I mean, I don't mind it, but at the same time, it's like, there's no reason why it needs to be that long. Okay, I'm getting kind of lost a little bit in this webbing stuff. Alright, it's working so far. The hard thing with Spider-Man 2 is that since he has all this intricate detail, it's very easy. You have to make sure the line weight you're using breaks up the body so you can tell what's going on. Like, if this line here around his head wasn't thick enough, it'd be so easy to lose his head in all this weird webbing detail. I'm just going to thicken up the outline of his head just a little bit, just to give it a little bit more pop. There we go. So the webbing on his arm, it's the same principle as before. So I'm just going to draw lines that kind of conform to the shape of his muscles. You have to think of everything almost as like a ball. And then try to figure out how you're going to wrap the line around that ball. Messed up a little there. It's not going to be perfect, and in all honesty, if you might have, if you can find ways to cheat it, that's all right. I think no one's gonna know the wiser. All right. Fix a little bit more muscle there. All right, let's get this webbing drawn in. At some point, I'm gonna have to bring in a new Sharpie because I think this one's it's running lower on ink. Now let's try another Sharpie. This one's kind of dying on me. And same principle applies here too. You could kind of figure out how to wrap these lines around the muscles to give it more of a, you know, round kind of curved shape. Okay. So I'm getting the lines all drawn in. So like I said, this drawing the webbing is the most tedious part of drawing Spider-Man. In the mid '80s, they introduced the black costume Spider-Man, which I think more people nowadays would associate that with the character Venom. But I almost believe that they came up with a black costume Spider-Man because people just got tired of drawing Spider-Man with all this detailed webbing, and they just wanted a character you could just like flesh out in like 10 minutes versus like a half hour. All right, do the muscles, the forearms. I'm kind of happy with this drawing is that it's not a tight portrait. Like I think like 80% of all the stuff I've been drawing is portraits. So for me, this is nicer, pulling back the camera a little and giving a little bit more of his body. Especially Spider-Man, he's such a dynamic, expressive character. I wouldn't be doing him any justice if I just like focused on his head. You need to see him doing something. Like, I think the iconic poses are always the poses where he's swinging, and I would have loved to have done that. But with the way I have my page oriented, it's set up to be landscape like this, and if I wanted to get, I think, a really cool pose, I think I would need to arrange it so maybe it'd be in portrait. But with portrait, I'm not making the most of the real estate of a screen, So if I really want to like give my drawings oomph when you look at them on like YouTube or whatever, for me going landscape fills up more of the page and more of the screen. But at the same time, I'm sacrificing maybe like a character pose I want to do, because I think some poses are stronger drawn one way versus the other. Okay, so now I'm just gonna draw in the webs in his fingers, and it's just simple. You just draw these rings. It doesn't need to be as complicated as the rest of his body. So you just draw all these curved ring lines. Like I mentioned earlier, I think there's something with my allergies, so I'm a little bit stuffed up. So I hope my voice and audio is coming out a little bit clearly, and I'm not like I don't have the sniffles like every 5 seconds. All right, I'm already a minute over the time I was shooting for, but that's all right. It's not an hour yet, so. Okay, so there's Spider-Man. I'm gonna start. Let's erase some of these web lines that I added earlier to clean up the drawing. I'm gonna actually come in and add a little bit more finer detail and shading, just so it gives the character a little bit more volume and believability. And it bothers me a little that this happens, but whenever I draw, there's always some casualty of war. I get a little too crazy when I erase. I'm trying to see if I have another Sharpie somewhere around here. Just give me a second. Right, so this Sharpie I'm going to use now, it's the same I was using like this one. This is the Ultra Fine. The point is, it's a really fine point. I'm not sure if it shows up best on camera since it's a little bit thinner, but for what I want to do here, I think I can create better tones with it. So we established earlier that the light's coming from up here, so I'm going to try to keep that in mind as I start figuring out the shadows and how I'm going to render this. Yeah, it's so much nicer working with a fresh Sharpie. I don't have to worry about the consistency of the ink. It's just flowing just right. Yeah, so this looks good. I like the amount of contrast that I've developed here, especially with adding these little tones. Kind of makes everything pop just a little bit. And we'll get more of that effect as I work on his torso here. Like adding a little bit of shading goes a long way with Spider-Man's costume, especially since his webbing. Although you could conform the web lines to the shape of the muscles, at least with my experience, it still makes the character look very flat. So these areas of musculature where there's none of this red webbing kind of detail, there's good opportunity to start developing a little bit of rigidness in his torso and his musculature. Spider-Man's such a colorful character, but if you could pull off a really cool looking black and white image of Spider-Man, I think there's something to be said there. Like there's some characters I have such a hard time drawing certain characters in black and white because I think they're more defined in color. It's like Superman. He's predominantly blue, red, and some yellow. And it's for me, it's so hard to convey that when I'm just drawing him in black and white. I can't have a harder time trying to define his muscles, trying to figure out the light logic of where the shadows are going to fall. Especially with Superman, you like if you don't draw the lines just right, you make him look too ripped. And I think when you make him look too ripped, he kind of loses something about his character. But at the same time, if you don't draw his muscles too defined, he kind of looks a little bit like dad bod. All right, so this is looking a lot better than I thought. I was to be honest, I was just so nervous about this drawing. I told myself today when I was going to draw, I'm like, I need to do something different. I can't just draw portraits all the time of stuff. And sometimes I just draw stuff that just came easy to me. Just because I know that, like, if I'm drawing in front of a camera, I'm like, I'm just going to keep things simple. That way, the chances of me making, like, goofing up and the room for error there is a lot lower. But when I do something like this, it's kind of like, the room for error is so high. Especially with the way I work very loose with loose pencils. It's not like I really draw a very tight pencil drawing where you kind of see everything in the early stages. For me, it's like I said before, I like to make it stuff up as I go along. And this guy's, there was just too much room for error with his costume and everything. So I'm pleasantly surprised that it came out at this level. Okay, now the question for me, I'm thinking right now, is do I go further and flesh out more detail and shadow in his costume, or is that going to be overkill? It could be overkill, but I think if I'm a little bit more conservative about it, I might be able to do it. So, well, let's just see. I'm going to take that gamble. I think there's a big psychological thing that goes on when your brain processes any sort of image or drawing. Like I think it fills in the holes, and it makes sense. It'll make sense of patterns for you, whereas I think you might not think about it, but your brain will naturally go, oh, okay, this is what's going on, and it'll fill in the holes and interpret the drawing in a certain way. And I think with artwork, if you know what you're doing, and I mean, currently I don't, but I think if you know how to speak that language and how to communicate visually and tell your brain what to do and what to think and what to see, it makes a little bit more sense. I'm just talking out of my ass right now, so don't mind me. I don't know how I feel about this. It almost looks like marching ants on them, but I don't know. I think if I had more okay, I'm not liking that too much. I'm not liking what I did. Let's turn this into gray. Maybe that'll make more sense. Okay, I think I don't want to get too carried away because I'm not 100% happy with what I just did. I might have I might have jeopardized my drawing. Yeah, I don't want to fuck around with this. I don't know. I can't. Yeah, these marching ant kind of deals. I was trying to create somewhat more of a little bit of a gradient. Oh, I know. I'll try to vary the line weight a little. I think that'll help. I'm not sure if this is working. Is this working? Yeah, it's alright. I'll live with it. But let's give the head just a little bit more pop. One thing I sometimes do in a drawing, if I mess up, I'll try to create other areas of visual interest to distract you from where I messed up. Yeah, it bothers me that this here, I think when I made these little tiny marching ants to give this a little bit sense of value, it's kind of like fighting this line here, these thicker contour lines. So what I'm going to do here, again, I'm not sure if this is the smartest thing. I'm going to double up this line. Now when I do stuff like this, I think this is more so my graphic design background coming into play. It's not necessarily sound like comic book drawing logic. For me, this is more about the idea of creating a design and drawing interest and making it have a sense of like logic and reason to it. Like the risk of doubling up on this contour line right now, it might make the character seem heavier and bulkier, which it's probably doing right now. But I kind of want to distract from the mistake I made around those other lines I did earlier. All right. Yeah, so right now I'm just doubling up on the contour line. I'm not sure if it's the smartest thing. I'll just keep on going until I'm happy with it. It seems like even if I'm making mistakes. I think in some ways I'm also a little bit partially inspired, not necessarily influenced, but when I see like certain graffiti artwork, there's such an interesting way that a lot of graffiti artists approach line weight. And that, I don't know, I think there's something there that I'm kind of like influenced by, or I pick up a little on. Alright, so there's that. Okay, this is working for me a little. Okay, I'm gonna try to fill up some of this. I kind of want to fill up some of this space here. I'm gonna cast a light on them. Yeah, I'm gonna cast light on them, kind of give them like a, I don't know, like stage light. Okay, I failed my goal of keeping this drawing under an hour. but I'm enjoying what I'm doing right now, so it doesn't matter. One thing I never understood about Spider-Man is that if you look at the spelling of Spider-Man, I think there's a hyphen between Spider and Man. And I don't get that because there's other characters like Superman and Batman where that's just one word. So why is Superman and Batman just one word, whereas Spider-Man has a hyphen in the middle of his name? Okay, Spider-Man, you're coming along. Yeah, I mean, overall I'm happy with it. I think there's some areas I kind of wish I could have gone back and maybe, I don't know, apply a little bit more detail. Now, what I'm doing right here is I think I'm just, I don't know, I'm just going out of my way to mess them up now. Lord, stop me. I can't stop. I'm not sure if the... alright, I'm stopped there. I think I'm going a little bit too far. I'm adding stuff there I shouldn't be adding. There's a part of me that just really wants to take a marker and start coloring them. His color scheme's so simple. I just need two colors, blue and red. Yeah, I'm like, I don't know. I really want to see what he looks like in color. Okay, this is my Spider-Man. There's stuff about it that I really like, and there's stuff about it I'm kind of scratching my head on, like what I'm doing right now. I think I'm just trying to figure out. I don't. I love adding a lot of value to stuff. Like I like working on stuff like this, and then the constant part, the webbing's. I don't know. It's kind of fun to draw, but for me, this feels flat unless I'm adding some sort of lines and shading to it, and I feel like I need to do that, but. I think at the same time, when I do that, it's just gonna mess things up, like I'm doing right now, because I can't put the pen down. I gotta stop. Right, stop. Okay. Okay, so this is my Spider-Man. So we started off with this guy with a slightly tweaked neck and lanky figure, and he has giant ass feet and cool looking hands. And then we drew this. We drew my Spider-Man where I got aggro and I ripped the page. But overall, I'm happy with it. I'm glad I got to draw a character that was more of a kind of more towards a medium shot than what I've been drawing lately. So as usual, my name is Lou, and it's March 9th, 21. Thanks for dropping by. I really appreciate it. It's like I said before, I know these videos get kind of long, and I just kind of just ramble since I'm just sitting here by myself. But if you took anything away from this and you enjoyed it, I'm glad. I'm glad I got to have a platform I get to draw and explore my art with again. So thanks for checking this out, and I hope you have a very lovely day. Talk to you later. Bye.